Let's bring in right now NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki. You know, Steve, it was pretty clear, and you laid it out pretty clearly in Ohio what we would be looking at as we looked at the race where Dolan needed to pick up votes to win, and where J.D. Vance needed to pick up votes. What are you looking at tonight as we look at the breakdown between McCormick and Oz and Barnett?
Yeah, a couple different things. So we'll just go through the numbers. And I saw you were putting some up here. I mean, here is the average of every poll that's out there. So you really do see kind of a three-way race here coming into tonight. You had a ton of money that's been spent against McCormick. One thing to keep in mind here geographically in Pennsylvania, I'll talk about this a lot tonight, is that on the primary ballot, they do list the county of residence for each candidate. McCormick is going to be listed as Allegheny County, Western Pennsylvania. It's where he's from originally. I know he had spent a lot of his professional career in Connecticut, but he's moved back to Western Pennsylvania. If there is any geographic advantage to being the Western Pennsylvania candidate, that's one thing we're going to be looking for tonight. You certainly heard their talk about the Pennsylvania suburbs, but obviously three-way race here on the Republican side. We haven't had as much polling on the Democratic side. Fetterman, though, has led big in the polling. We've seen the wild card with Fetterman as he suffered the stroke over the weekend. He's not been out in public since then, saying he's recovering from it, but that's a bit of a wild card here on Election Day. Then the other question I have is this. You're talking about the Republican gubernatorial primary. Doug Mastriano, who you were just talking about in the poll average, has surged far ahead in this race, got the Donald Trump endorsement over the weekend, and he and Kathy Barnett have cross-endorsed each other. So that's one of the other questions to look for tonight. If Mastriano really is running away with this Republican primary, are we going to see a correlation in the places where Mastriano is doing best? Is he going to be pulling Barnett with her? Is there going to be sort of a tag team there? And while Trump endorsed Dr. Oz and has put out a statement saying don't go for Kathy Barnett, the statement that Trump put out about Kathy Barnett also said that he does think she has a future in the party and he could ultimately support her. So it might be a bit of a mixed message there. So I want to see if there's sort of a cross-pollination of the Mastriano-Barnett vote as that comes in tonight. The other wild card year, Josh Shapiro, unopposed for the Democratic nomination. His campaign has been putting up ads that are ostensibly to a Democrat attacking Doug Mastriano, but really what Shapiro's been trying to do is he's been trying to use his ads to increase Mastriano's credibility with Republican primary voters, playing up his ties to Donald Trump, playing up his questioning of the 2020 election. Shapiro wants to run against Mastriano. And what this all builds to is the question for the general election in Pennsylvania, if a Mastriano wins on the Republican side tonight, if a Barnett wins on the Republican side in the Senate race, what makes some Republicans you talk to nervous about Pennsylvania, I look at it this way. Joe Biden won Pennsylvania. You can see here in 2010. Remember, he flipped it. Trump had won it in 2016. Biden won it by 80,000 votes in 2020. Donald Trump won it by 46,000 votes in 2016. So there was a swing of about 126,000 votes between 2016 and 2020. That was the difference between Pennsylvania being a red state in 16 and being a blue state for Biden in 2020. And where was the shift most pronounced in Pennsylvania? Who were the voters who were most turned off by Donald Trump in those 4 years? They were those suburbs, those collar counties right outside of Philadelphia. Bucks County, one of them where you were just talking to Vaughan, Chester, Montgomery, Delaware County. Check this out. In 2016, if you look at the collar counties outside of Philadelphia, Hillary Clinton won them. Her margin was 188,000 votes. If you fast forward to 2020, Joe Biden won them. Look at how much bigger that margin was, 293,000 votes. So basically, Biden gained 105,000 votes, a net of 105,000 votes in the Philadelphia suburbs. Remember, it was a change of 125,000 that flipped the state. He got almost all of it. He got like 80% of it from growth in the Philadelphia suburbs. So what Democrats hope, what Republicans fear, is that if Republicans put up Doug Mastriano, if they put up Kathy Barnett, it's the voters in those Philadelphia suburbs that will be a bridge too far for, and that could keep Pennsylvania in the Democratic column in 2022.
And what are you going to be looking for as we're trying to figure out early tonight when the polls close? How are you going to be able to figure out? Is there any particular counties you're going to where you're going to be looking at Dr. Oz versus Kathy Barnett to see if Barnett really is cutting into Oz's vote totals?
Yeah, so like I said, I want to see if there is a bit of an East-West divide here, because there is one theory here. I think you're looking at the Biden-Trump numbers here, but let's see if I can call up the Senate race actually here. There is one theory here that there could be a bit of an East-West divide that might benefit McCormick. The other thing to keep in mind, though, we have seen this in the Republican primaries so far this year. There's a difference between, in Pennsylvania, I think could be a big state where this plays in, the mail vote and the same-day vote. We saw this in 2020, how Republican voters were much more likely to show up and vote on Election Day in person. But Pennsylvania also has mail-in voting. And I think there's going to be, we've seen in other races, Republican primaries the last couple of weeks, we've seen some pretty significant swings where the more moderate, less Trumpy candidates do well, where the mail-in votes are counted first. And then when the same-day vote comes in, that's where the more sort of Trump-aligned candidates do better, the moderate candidates do worse. We saw that with Dolan in Ohio a couple weeks ago. We saw it in West Virginia. We saw it in Nebraska last week. Pennsylvania, it's a bit of a mishmash. Some of these counties, I think we're going to get mail vote right away tonight. Then we're going to get the same day. Other counties, I think we could be looking at a bit of a repeat of what we saw in 2020, where they don't even look at the mail stuff until late tonight, until tomorrow. So I would flag that going in. There's the potential here, depending on what county we're talking about, for some significant swings here that could come late, just based on the type of vote that's being counted.
Yeah, I think also in this race, much like Ohio, McCormick filling that lane that Dolan filled in Ohio. It's going to be interesting to see how McCormick does in the rural counties. If he's faring early on better than Dolan did in Ohio, maybe he's staying competitive. But if he has the same trouble as a mainstream Republican in rural counties, boy, it could be a long night for him. Steve Kornacki, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. We'll see you back at the big board tomorrow morning with the results. Mika?